Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles. Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now, let's start with the story. They thought they had me. Betrayed, framed, and ruthlessly forced out. But they underestimated me. I didn't just survive, I dismantled their entire empire from the shadows, all while raising my precious daughters single-handedly. This is how it all went down. One afternoon, the intercom on my bedside table buzzed, startling me just as I was drifting off for a nap. I reached over and pressed the button. "Sir, there's a lady here who wants to see you," my secretary Maria said. "Her voice scan indicates, 'Distress, sir. Significant,'" the system added, its synthesized tone oddly detached. "Maria, I'm rather occupied right now. Could you see if Sophia can handle her for me?" I answered. Sophia, my private assistant, typically managed most visitors. Truthfully, I wasn't genuinely busy. I'd become a recluse of sorts, preferring the solitude of my penthouse, especially for afternoon rests. Maria knew this, so her disturbing me was unusual. "The lady says it's highly personal and urgent. She insists she can only speak with you," Maria pressed. "Tell her she'll need to schedule an appointment." "Perhaps next week," I said, a hint of reluctance in my voice. "She insists it's critical and is very determined, sir," Maria persisted. "Fine, all right, I suppose I should see her. Bring her to my office in about 5 minutes," I conceded. I got out of bed, quickly splashed water on my face to shake off the drowsiness, and made my way to my personal office. Looking out the expansive window at the sprawling city of Etheria below, a familiar wave of bitterness washed over me. I despise this glittering cage, I thought. I hate everything about it. I probably even harbor resentment for everyone working in the 27 stories beneath me, even if they all work for me. Maria entered without knocking. She rarely did anymore since my office visits were infrequent. I was merely the public facade of the organization now. I remained in my penthouse because, frankly, I had nowhere else I wanted to go and little else I cared to do. Maria was supposed to be escorting a young woman, but she strode past her into the office with an air of officious importance. The unexpected grandeur of the office seemed to catch the visitor off guard, momentarily deflating her resolve. I could tell she was uncomfortable in this opulent setting, clearly out of her element. Before Maria could make a formal introduction, the woman spoke. "That's Mr. Ethan Cole, right?" "Yes," I replied. "I'm Ms. Diaz from Metro Social Services," she said. I wasn't sure if she intended to intimidate me with that declaration. "What can I do for you, or is it Mrs. Diaz from Metro Social Services?" I asked. "Please call me Elena. We try not to be too formal," she replied. I noticed the flicker of confusion on her face. Neither I nor this environment seemed to match her expectations. She was accustomed to working with individuals on the opposite end of the financial spectrum. Here, with me, she seemed utterly out of place. What do you think, listeners? Can environment alone change the dynamic of a conversation? "It's all right, Elena. You can call me Ethan." "What can I do for you now?" I asked kindly. "Pardon me, Maria. That will be all. You're free to leave, Ms. Diaz," I said, addressing my secretary. Maria gave me a knowing glance and a subtle wink as she left, closing the door quietly behind her. My visitor was very pleasant, though I had to admit, people had used far stranger tactics to reach me in the past, especially those looking for a handout. "Hello, Mr. Cole. Ethan, I apologize," she began. "I work for social services, and I just want to tell you—" "You've already mentioned that several times," I interrupted, a bit more curtly than I intended. "Please tell me how I can help." "Where do I even begin?" she asked, her eyes darting around the room. The sheer elegance of the place was clearly not what she had anticipated. "Look, I have a case involving 2 children and a mother who attempted suicide. You might want to read this note. It was found beside her." She handed me an envelope. Inside wasn't a simple note, but a full letter. I settled into my large swivel chair and opened it. The first line read, "My dearest Ethan." I recognized the handwriting instantly. My mind reeled, flashing back 11 years to when my once happy life had imploded with sudden, devastating force. Damn, I remembered that hellish morning. A water main had burst on Cypress Avenue, causing gridlock as people struggled through detours, trying to slip into the Thorn Dynamics building unnoticed. I was already an hour and a half late. My commute had turned into a nightmare for the second time that week. When I finally arrived, Carla, my department secretary, though she actually managed 3 or 4 of us, looked at me sharply. "Ethan, where have you been? Why wasn't your phone on?" she asked. "Damn, I must have forgotten to charge the blasted thing last night," I admitted. It was becoming a habit. By the time I got home, I was too exhausted to think straight. "Marcus Thorne has been trying to reach you since 9 this morning. He's really worked up about something. You need to get up there. Pronto." "They're such pains," Carla said. That was all I needed to hear. Since his father, Arthur Thorne, retired, that arrogant young pup had been acting like he owned the place. Marcus and his brother Julian thought they were the saviors of the tech industry, but neither had a clue how to negotiate a deal or keep major clients satisfied. I wondered which important client the little toad had infuriated this time. I muttered under my breath. "Thank God you're here, Ethan." "I've been looking all morning." "You seriously need to fix your time management skills," Marcus snapped as I stepped into his ostentatious office. "If you hadn't pushed to move the damn headquarters from Oak Brook to downtown Etheria, I wouldn't have to deal with these awful traffic jams every morning and evening," he added, conveniently forgetting it was his idea. My mind was racing, thinking about why I didn't have the guts to say that to his face. But don't we all have those moments of cowardly silence, listeners? "I'm sorry, Marcus. There was a major water main break on Cypress Avenue," I explained. "Okay, you made it on time, at least. I thought you had that fancy apartment paid for by the firm just a couple blocks away, where you supposedly stay during the week with that little distraction your wife doesn't know about to keep you warm at night?" he sneered. "Anyway, something's wrong with the Sterling Enterprises account. Their software deliveries are delayed again. I need you to go out there and talk some sense into the Sterling board, smooth things over. They're threatening to take their contract elsewhere. If that happens, not only will heads roll here, but also at the development facility." "You've charmed Sterling before, Marcus," I said, injecting false confidence into my voice. "I'm sure you can do it again." "And why aren't you going too?" I wondered silently. "While you're at it, take your brother Julian's mountain of excuses with you. You're wrecking this damn company. If your old man knew how you two were messing things up, he'd be spinning in his grave." Marcus actually had the audacity to say. "We think things like that, don't we?" I wished I could say them out loud too, but if I did, I'd probably be in way over my head. "I'm going to call Leo Sterling. I'm sure he'll come around. We've done business with his uncle Victor for years," I said. "You're on the noon flight to Geneva," Marcus declared. "Victor Sterling's retired, and his nephew Leo Sterling is the new chairman. Both Julian and I can't travel this week. We're booked solid. The flight leaves at 12 o'clock. Damn, I thought. I won't be able to go. I need to get home first and pack. Besides, I'm supposed to take Olivia to the opera tonight. She's been begging me for months, I protested. You'll have to take her another time. Don't worry, you'll be reimbursed for the tickets. The opera runs through Saturday night, Marcus said dismissively. Olivia had been pestering me for weeks, but with the massive Innovate Corp contract consuming all my time, I'd been getting home too late every evening. Now that Innovate's deal was finally settled, I figured my evenings would be free for a while. I know the last night is sold out. Tonight was the only day we could get tickets, I said. If I go to Geneva, I won't be able to get back until at least Friday. Olivia's going to lose it, I added. Will she have to go with a friend then? Olivia, more than anyone, understands how crucial the Sterling account is to our organization. It makes up over half our revenue, Marcus stated coldly. Call her at the development facility and tell her to go home and pack your bags. You'll never make it home and back to the airport in time. Now, get moving. We can't afford for you to miss that flight, Marcus insisted. Contemptible little worm, I thought as I left his office. I'd started working for Arthur Thorne straight out of college. It was a much smaller operation back then. Thorne Dynamics, or Thorne and Associates, as it was then, primarily developed bespoke software for niche industries. Arthur Thorne had gotten in early, years before the dot-com boom and bust. Many smaller tech firms went bankrupt when the bubble burst. Arthur Thorne was one of the shrewd ones who bought up struggling competitors, their talent, and their IP. He'd integrate them into his workshop, refine their products, and sell them at a modest profit to companies across the emerging global markets. Arthur Thorne was a staunch pragmatist. I suspected much of the profits were cleverly managed through various holdings. It wouldn't do for a respected businessman to appear too ostentatious with his tax efficiency. When bankruptcy started thinning the market, Arthur shifted the company's business model. He became a key solutions provider for corporations wanting to integrate complex software systems throughout Europe. It was straightforward. Modules arrived from various developers, were integrated and customized here, and then deployed anywhere in the EU. The company thrived, at least until Arthur's two sons were old enough to join. Unfortunately, both had gone to prestigious business schools and were eager to implement every trendy, agile, and just-in-time system they'd learned about. It worked fine on a predictable production line, but in our bespoke software business, it left no room for the inevitable error, the unforeseen delay. Code came in from all over the world, and there were always holdups, dozens of potential reasons why. Most of our clients understood the reality, but if the brothers had just built a few days buffer into their delivery estimates, we wouldn't have faced nearly as many crises. It was always obvious to me, tell a customer they'll get their software in 3 weeks, then deliver it 5 days early, they're thrilled. Tell them 2 weeks, then deliver a week late, and all hell breaks loose. Never promise what you can't deliver. What I couldn't understand was why Marcus insisted I go to Geneva. The brothers had just finalized the new Sterling contract. They should be the ones to fix things if there was a problem. But I knew how it would look to the board if everything went sideways. I'd be the one to carry the blame. Back at my desk, I called Olivia's office at the Willow Creek Development Facility. Yes, she worked for Thorne Dynamics too. That's what Marcus was hinting at. If things went south, it wouldn't just be my neck on the line. Olivia's might be too. Olivia and I had met when she first joined the QA department. Yes, a QA department with actual people testing, not just automated scripts. That gives you an idea of how long ago this was. We hit it off right away, though we didn't get together until the office holiday party that year. You know how those go, right, listeners? Everyone's stealing kisses under the strategically placed mistletoe. When I kissed Olivia, something just clicked. We didn't talk about it, but from then on, we were an item. I remember someone eventually asking us to move because others were waiting for their turn under the mistletoe. We never really talked about that first kiss. We were just together. We went a little crazy buying each other Christmas presents. I even went to her family's Christmas dinner. I think they were expecting someone else, probably someone more official, but no one said anything. We rang in the new year together and woke up in my apartment on January 1st. That was the first time we really got close. I'm a little ashamed to say I don't remember much about that night, but I do remember this. Olivia never really went back to her old place. A few months later, we were married. At home, I had the best 10 years of my life. Work was great too until Arthur's sons finished university and joined the firm. Until then, I'd been Arthur's right-hand man, his number 2 for everything, whether official or off the record. The twins' arrival changed all that. Arthur was a good man. He didn't immediately place them above me in the company hierarchy, but I could tell they resented the influence I had over him. Then Arthur listed the company on the stock exchange and made an absolute fortune. That was the only time he truly disappointed me. I expected he'd send a few shares my way, but he didn't. Another thing that never happened. I was never appointed as a director. I didn't join the board, though both of Arthur's sons did. Then Arthur had his damn stroke. From his hospital bed, he told me to keep an eye on the boys. I had hopes, you know. I figured if he'd given me some shares and put me on the board, I'd have had some influence with them. Yes, that's exactly what I thought. But it's not something I ever said to Arthur. He was fading fast and I could see it. He retired soon after and passed away 3 months later. The boys didn't waste any time. The moment the will was read, they began making changes, none of which I thought were good ones. But there wasn't much I could do. They leased new, flashy offices in downtown Etheria and moved most of the admin and sales teams there. Marcus oversaw that department while Julian took full control of the Willow Creek facility. As a result, Olivia ended up as his executive assistant. She'd been a project manager for a while, but that didn't last. Julian was constantly on her case. I wasn't happy when I found out she was working directly for Julian Thorne. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I didn't like the way either of the brothers looked at her. Maybe it was jealousy, or maybe it was just because I never liked them. Still, I sensed something was off. Olivia was 5 years older than both of them, but she was a very attractive woman, if I may say so myself. She also seemed to get along quite well with Julian. No, I didn't suspect anything inappropriate then. But because I disliked the brothers, I'd occasionally make critical remarks about them, and Olivia would jump to their defense. That's where the trouble began. As the business picked up, I found myself running all over the place, keeping clients happy, securing new contracts. Meanwhile, Julian was probably seeing more of Olivia than I was. That meant she always heard his side of things before they landed on my desk. Now, back to the Sterling contract and my last-minute trip to the continent. I called Olivia to share the good news. I think they heard her reaction all the way at the Etheria Eagles football stadium. "Yes, I know my hearing is fine, but you did promise to take me to the opera tonight. What's going on? Don't tell me you agreed to go to Geneva," she exclaimed. That was another issue between us. Whenever I was sent somewhere, Olivia always seemed to think it was my idea, as though I had volunteered for these miserable assignments. I never understood why. From our conversations, it was clear she truly believed I had a choice in the matter. "Olivia, Marcus just told me I have to go. You do know about the problems with the Sterling contract, right? Hasn't Julian mentioned any of it?" "There are always problems lately," she snapped. "But why is it always you who has to fix them, especially tonight? We were supposed to see Carmen. I'm tired of how you've been treating me. What about my opera?" she went on. Do you see what I'm saying, listeners? I had only told her I was being sent to Geneva, but she was convinced I had volunteered. I'm afraid I lost my temper. She wasn't actually listening to what I was saying. "To be honest, Olivia, I don't give a damn about that stupid opera right now," I snapped. "Our jobs are on the line here. If I can't calm the Sterling board down, the company's finished. No orders, no future. So don't blame me because your facility can't deliver on time." That was the problem with splitting the business into two parts. It created a divisive us versus them mentality. And unfortunately, I was with us, and Olivia was firmly on their side. It was a disaster in the making. "Please," I said, "go home now, pack my suitcase, and meet me at the Etheria International Airport check-in desk at 11 a.m. There was silence on the line for a few moments. Then, in a very calm, measured voice, Olivia said, "You'll get your suitcase and maybe a few other things you didn't bargain for. I'm not your servant, you know." Then the line went dead. Why did I shout at Olivia? Why did she snap at me? Damn. When she finally met me at the airport, I knew I needed to apologize, but she didn't show up at 11 a.m. I waited at the check-in desk, scanning the crowd. Nothing. Then, just as the desk was about to close, Olivia appeared, walking through the departure lounge like time was hers to command. "Damn it, Olivia, what took you so long?" I said sharply, but only because I was anxious we'd miss the flight. And then it hit me. It wasn't just my fault or hers. It wasn't anyone's fault that she'd been so upset that night, or that things had spiraled between us. It was just a terrible time, and it wasn't right for us to part that way. "Olivia, I'm sorry," I said. I'm worked up about this trip." I leaned in to kiss her, but she pulled away. "We don't have time for that," she said coolly. "You've got a contract to save." Just then, the woman at the check-in counter called out, "Mr. Cole, you must check your bag now, or it won't make the flight." I nodded and quickly finished the check-in process. But when I turned back to Olivia, she was gone. "How long until boarding?" I asked the clerk. "About 30 minutes, she said, "but I recommend you stay in the departure area." I didn't listen. I ran toward the direction Olivia had come from, hoping to catch her, but she must have been moving a lot faster on the way out than on the way in. At the end of the concourse, I reached the enclosed bridge to the short-term parking area. Halfway across, I spotted it. A flashy crimson Ferrari pulling out of the ground-level car park. Through the passenger side windshield, I could just make out Olivia's distinctive scarf. I didn't need to see who was driving. I already knew. No one drove that ridiculous status symbol except Julian Thorne. I was furious. Julian Thorne was supposedly too busy to fly to Geneva, yet somehow he had time to chauffeur my wife around. As I made my way back into the terminal, I was seething. Unlike my usual self, I walked straight into the airport bar and ordered a stiff drink. I sat there fuming for about 20 minutes before my flight was finally called. Most of the journey was spent not reviewing contracts, but replaying that scene in my mind, a bitter taste in my mouth. I did eventually comb through the Sterling agreements, searching for the usual loopholes Arthur liked to include, those little clauses that gave us some wiggle room on delivery dates and such. But it seemed the younger Thorns had handled most of the recent deals, and those modest back doors were now firmly closed. When I arrived at Geneva International, I was greeted by none other than Leo Sterling himself, along with Clara, his personal assistant. Clearly a hand-me-down from his uncle's era, and a small entourage of familiar faces. I'd met Leo before, though calling him the kid was a stretch. He had always reminded me of the Thorne brothers' entitled heir, and I only had a few years on him. Back when Victor Sterling was still active, he had done most of the talking. Leo had always been just another agreeable shadow, nodding along with Victor's every word and chuckling at all the right times. Leo's overly enthusiastic welcome immediately put me on edge, as did the fact that his team insisted on carrying my bags and laptop to the waiting limousine. "We've assigned you the company suite at the Beau Rivage," Leo explained. "Uncle Victor expected to see you during this trip, but the timing isn't great. He's still on his world cruise. Told me to let you know he'd catch up with you when the ship docks in Monte Carlo." That caught me off guard. It was strange for Victor Sterling to want to reconnect, especially now that he'd retired. Sure, Arthur Thorne and I had crossed paths with Victor a few times over the years, mostly through business dealings. I never assumed we were anything more than cordial colleagues. Why on earth would he want to meet now? After stepping away from it all, Arthur had always stayed at the Grand Kempinski when in Geneva. I, on the other hand, preferred something a bit more modest when traveling alone, but Leo informed me the suite was corporate property, so I figured it would be unoccupied. I couldn't quite imagine the Thorne brothers springing for luxury on my behalf otherwise. Leo dropped me at the Beau Rivage and said Clara would return to collect me for dinner at 7 o'clock. He and his entourage then departed. This trip was growing more bizarre by the minute. Technically, I should have been the one inviting Leo to dinner. By now it was about 4 p.m. local time. I started to wonder if Olivia had gone to the opera on her own after all. She already had the tickets. I called her mobile, no answer. It would have been around 3 p.m. in Etheria. I sent her a text asking if she was enjoying Carmen and who she'd taken with her. When Clara arrived to pick me up, she found me still on the phone. I hadn't received a reply to my message, and I figured Olivia must have been home by then. I tried the house phone again, still no answer. This time, I left a message on the answering machine letting her know I was heading out to dinner and would call again the next day. As I moved to leave the room, Clara grabbed my briefcase and placed it back on the chair. "Leave it somewhere safe," she said. "This is primarily a social occasion, Ethan. Leo wants you to meet his family tonight. He mentioned it was unfortunate your wife couldn't join you." "What's going on, Clara?" I asked once we were in the car. She took a moment to consider her response before finally saying, "Leo simply believes you and he should be doing much more business together. He wants you to really get to know one another. He also wants you to meet the entire Sterling Enterprises European Board of Directors." None of it made much sense, at least not until I began to suspect that Sterling Enterprises might be trying to recruit me from Thorne Dynamics. It was the only logical explanation for all the odd behavior. Dinner that evening was outstanding, and nearly all the Sterling board members were there along with their spouses. Afterward, we went to a sophisticated jazz club where some of the group danced. I didn't join in. I was too tired after the flight and had been awake 5 hours longer than anyone else. But as the night wore on, I became more convinced my headhunting theory was correct. Every board member made a point of speaking with me, making me feel welcomed. Clara stayed close the entire evening, almost like a personal concierge. Whenever someone approached, she'd quietly tell me their name and share whatever background I needed. By the time I returned to my room, it was around 2 a.m. in Geneva, 8 p.m. back in Etheria. There were no messages on my mobile, and reception confirmed that Olivia hadn't left anything for me there either. I considered calling her, but Figured it was still a bit late, especially since she'd likely been out the previous night. I was dead asleep when breakfast arrived at 11 a.m., delivered with enough clatter to wake the dead. Right behind it came Clara again, slipping back into her now familiar role as my de facto assistant. At 12 o'clock, you'll meet with the entire board. It shouldn't take long. After that, Leo's invited you to play a round of golf at Golf Club de Genève. Do you play? Of course you do. I remember you and Arthur playing with Victor. Anyway, straight after the meeting, you'll take a rooftop helipad flight to Leo's estate near Lausanne, she said. Leo wanted to know how eager you are to return to Etheria. That really depends on what Leo and the board say about our delayed software patches, I replied. I believe they'll be pleased with whatever you have to say. After all, you're the one they know and trust now. So let's go, or you'll be late, Clara added, suddenly losing her usual composure. She seemed oddly flustered for a moment and eager to exit either the room or my presence. Truthfully, I hadn't caught everything Clara was saying. I was more focused on calling Olivia. I tried her office at Willow Creek, but the switchboard operator, thankfully not recognizing my voice from a distance, cut me off, saying Olivia wasn't in that day. When I asked if she knew why Olivia wasn't in, she didn't ask who I was, just said she had no idea. I don't know why, but something, maybe a sixth sense, urged me to ask her to connect me with Julian Thorne. She told me he was also out of the office that day. I was furious. I tried calling my home number again. No answer. Then I dialed Olivia's mobile and it was switched off. Julian's phone was off too. By that point, I completely lost my temper. I called Marcus Thorne at the Etheria office. The moment he answered, I demanded to know where Julian was. I told him there was something in the Sterling contract I needed Julian to clarify. It struck me that Marcus took just a bit too long to respond. I assume Julian has gone to Boston. He's meeting with Innovate Corp directors today, Marcus said. I believe he mentioned taking Olivia along to take notes. Typical Marcus, relying on vague memory and implications. I thought to myself, you lying little snake. I closed that Innovate contract last week, signed, sealed, and delivered. What kind of rubbish are you trying to pass off on me now? But I didn't say it out loud. It was only a thought. When Marcus asked how things were going on my end, I told him I might need to stay a few extra days to smooth things over. As soon as I ended the call, I rang Monty Carter, the CEO of Innovate Corp, at his office in Boston. His secretary confirmed that Julian had no meetings scheduled with her boss that day. In fact, she couldn't recall them ever meeting at all. Just then, Clara reappeared and urged me to hurry up and get ready for the meeting. I crammed down the rest of my breakfast and rushed into the shower. We arrived late, but no one seemed to notice. What followed was a whirlwind of introductions and a tour of Sterling's Geneva operations. We didn't sit down in the meeting room until around 1 o'clock. The negotiations were a farce. Everyone agreed with whatever I said. They seemed more interested in making sure I wasn't offended than in hashing out business. It was clear they shared my opinion that the Thorne brothers were incompetent, but no one said it outright. By that point, I was certain they were preparing to make me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I was genuinely surprised when no offer came at all. When the meeting ended, Leo, a few directors, Clara, and I went up to the rooftop to catch the helicopter. Clara, as expected, joined us. She asked when I wanted to return to Etheria and scheduled a flight for me later that day. While we were on the golf course, I called my department secretary in Etheria and told her I'd be staying abroad for a few days. I wanted to give the impression I'd left the country, no matter what was going on back home. Apparently, Clara overheard the conversation. I'm sorry to pry, Ethan, she said with noticeable concern. But is something wrong? You seem tense every time you call home. I'm not entirely sure, but I have a feeling something isn't right back there, I said. However, I think it's something personal. Ethan, we've known each other for a long time, through all the dealings with Thorne Dynamics. Can I help? Clara asked gently. Have you ever had a colleague show unexpected kindness, listeners? It can make a world of difference. You already are, I replied. I know you're good at staying under the radar. She nodded. I am, so what can I do? You could help by making sure no one finds out I'm flying home tonight. At least no one in Etheria. If what I suspect is true, I want to try and catch them in the act. My God, you don't think your wife is... I don't know, Clara. I interrupted. "But we had an argument before I left, and she hasn't been where I expected her to be when I've tried calling. Her phone's been off, and I haven't been able to reach her. Maybe she's still upset, but there's also someone else. Someone I can't get a hold of either. And another person over there is lying to me. There has to be a reason for that." "I can see why you're eager to get back," Clara said thoughtfully. "Listen, if anyone from Etheria calls, I'll have the call redirected to me. Besides Leo, I'm the only one who knows you're flying out tonight anyway. And all of Leo's calls go through me, so no one trying to reach you will actually get through. You can call them back on your mobile, and they'll have no idea where you are." "Thank you, Clara. I should get back to the game now," I said. While we were talking, I noticed Leo heading in our direction. I had stepped away earlier to make my calls, staying out of earshot. What puzzled me was seeing Clara make a subtle hand gesture just as Leo approached. Immediately, he veered off and began talking to the other two players. The game ended shortly afterward, and we headed to Leo's grand lakeside villa for dinner. That's where I met Victor Sterling's daughter, Chloe. Again, I sensed something was off. She seemed uneasy around me. I couldn't quite identify why, but I had the nagging sense that these people knew something I didn't. I began to wonder if I'd made a mistake confiding in Clara. Later that day, we returned to company headquarters by helicopter, and then Clara drove me to the airport. She had arranged for someone to collect my things from the Beau Rivage. The flight to Etheria International was uneventful until I landed. A flight attendant greeted me in the arrivals lounge and told me there was an urgent phone call waiting. He directed me to a service phone. "Ethan, it's Clara," she said on the line. "After you left last night, your wife called." I told her you were in a conference with Leo. Later, both of the Sterlings called separately, and I gave them the same explanation. Your wife called again asking when you'd be back. I told her you were scheduled for the Saturday evening flight. Is that all right? "Yes, that's fine, Clara," I said. "I'll call them from my mobile and tell them the same story. Thank you for your help." "Stay in touch, Ethan." "I'll let you know if anyone else call," she said. So my loving wife had reappeared, suddenly showing concern about my whereabouts. I couldn't help but wonder why the change. Why was she so interested now? I checked into the Gateway Hotel near the airport and found that Apex Rentals had already delivered the car I'd arranged from Geneva. Technically, it was through the company's account, but the reservation had been made for me personally. Not feeling tired, I decided to drive past my house in the Willow Creek suburbs. Olivia's car was in the driveway and the house was dark, just as I expected, considering it was shortly after 4 a.m. From a public phone at the corner of our street, I phoned the house. No answer. The machine picked up. I called 4 times in a row, and when she didn't respond once, I figured she wasn't home after all. Odd, given that her car was there. I walked down and quietly let myself in. A quick sweep of the place confirmed it was empty. What now? I asked myself. The only thing I could think to do was sit and wait for Olivia to come back. I made a pot of coffee and settled into the living room. I'd hoped the caffeine would keep me awake, but eventually I dozed off. Just before 8 a.m., the distinctive rumble of a Ferrari's exhaust jolted me awake. Through the window, I watched as Olivia and Julian climbed out of the crimson monstrosity and walked up to the front door. "It won't take me long to shower and change," she said. "Could you go into the kitchen and make some coffee? I need something to clear my head." Amazingly, neither of them noticed me sitting in the living room, even though the door was wide open. I suppose people don't tend to see what they don't expect. Olivia rushed upstairs while Julian walked into the kitchen. I heard him rummaging through the cupboards. Then he called up, "Olivia, where do you keep your coffee?" "The machine's on the counter," she replied. "Well, I can't find any pods," he shouted back. I heard her come back downstairs and step into the kitchen. "You men are useless without a good woman to look after you," she said playfully. "They should be on the side. I don't think I put it in the... My God, what are you doing here?" She had stepped into the living room in search of the coffee pods and had finally spotted me. She stood frozen, wearing a skimpy silk robe I'd never seen before. "I was just sitting here waiting for my faithful wife to return," I said, rising from the chair. "And now I think it's time I knock the teeth out of this slimy little toad." For a brief moment, both Olivia and Julian were rooted in place, shocked. understandably since they believed I was still in Europe. Then Julian broke from his trance and made a run for it. Unfortunately for him, our front door had a complicated and awkward deadbolt, one that turned in the opposite direction most people expect. The more he struggled with it, the more frantic he became. I slammed him against the door and started laying into him. I don't think the little coward had any idea how to defend himself. Olivia was screaming that it wasn't what it looked like and trying to pull me off Julian. Honestly, I don't think I hit him as hard as I would have liked. Truth be told, I'm not a violent person by nature. So when he curled up on the floor in a pathetic little ball, I stopped. Some people might have taken the opportunity to really beat him down, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I opened the front door after turning the awkward latch the correct way and shoved him outside. Then, without thinking, I grabbed Olivia and pushed her out too, slamming the door shut behind them. I went back into the living room, this time heading straight for the liquor cabinet. Olivia banged on the door and rang the bell for a bit. Through the living room window, I saw Julian emerge from his car with a jacket, presumably to cover Olivia's nearly naked body. She called through the mail slot again, insisting it wasn't what it seemed, and begging me to let her in, but I wasn't about to start yelling through the door. I ignored her. By then, a few neighbors had taken notice of our little drama. I could see them peering from their doors and gardens. Realizing I must be in the living room, Olivia changed tactics and began pounding on the window, still shouting for me to let her inside. Unfortunately for her, she must have hit the window a bit too hard, just as the police were arriving. The pane shattered and she badly cut her arm on the broken glass. It seemed only moments later that an ambulance and paramedics showed up, presumably called by the officers. A policeman who had been speaking to Olivia and Julian knocked on my door. "Good morning, sir. Would you mind telling me your side of this little situation?" he asked. "I caught my wife with a loser. Do I really need to say more?" I replied. "Not really, sir, but the man says you assaulted him," he added. "I did. Wouldn't you?" "He was in my house," I said. "And your wife?" "You didn't strike her?" "No, I didn't. I just helped her out the door so she could rejoin her boyfriend," I said. I thought I was being rather generous. Another officer walked up, shaking his head. "The man doesn't want to press charges, and the lady says there was no violence toward her." Then he turned to me. "Sir, your wife has a pretty bad cut on her arm. The medic says she'll need stitches, so they'll be taking her to the ER. She'll need some clothes. Would you be willing to bring some down for her?" "Not a bloody chance. That's her problem now, not mine. Let her boyfriend buy her some. He seems to have enough money," I said. "Look," the officer said, "you know, she must have something upstairs. She can't go around like that. She's nearly naked." "Well, then she'll need to find another sucker to go and fetch them. You can go get them if you want. Or maybe her boyfriend would like to come back in and try his luck again," I said. My attention was drawn to the purr of the Ferrari as it followed the ambulance down the street. It seemed she had decided to do without. "Now, if you'll excuse me, officers, I need to call the window repair people and my lawyer," I added. The police left after that, one of them mumbling something about hoping they wouldn't be back later in the day. I phoned the Glaciers, and a man arrived within minutes to replace the shattered window. He tried making small talk while he worked, but it quickly became clear I wasn't in the mood for conversation. My lawyer referred me to a colleague at the firm who handled divorces. She informed me that she had initiated the process, but couldn't do much until we knew who Olivia was working with legally. Everything, she said, depended on how Olivia wanted to proceed. Middle of story, call to action break. Narrator. What a devastating turn of events, right, listeners? Betrayal, lies, a life turned upside down in an instant. Before we continue with Ethan's story and find out how he navigates this wreckage, if you're finding this chronicle of lost love and resilience compelling, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Lost Love Chronicles if you haven't already. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to light. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Ethan's shoes at that moment? It's a tough one. Now, back to the fallout. Throughout the morning, I noticed the police driving by several times while I was packing all of Olivia's clothes into trash bags and storing them in the garage. I assumed there was some communication between the police and Olivia because around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a different patrol car pulled up outside. This time, it was just one officer, and he stayed in the vehicle. Not long after, a Thorn Dynamics Company van, driven by one of the lads from the Willow Creek facility, came down the street and backed into my driveway. Using the remote, I opened the garage shutter. It was obvious why they had come. Olivia, her arm in a sling, stepped out of the passenger side alongside a woman I recognized from her office, while the man and the woman loaded her belongings into the van. I heard Olivia trying the service door between the garage and the kitchen, but it was locked. She came around to the front and rang the doorbell. Ethan, I need to talk to you. You've got it all wrong. Nothing happened between Julian and me. Ethan, do you hear me? I know you're in there. Please, let's talk about this. You're making a terrible mistake, she called through the mail slot. I opened the door briefly, shoved her handbag into her hands before she could say anything else, and slammed it shut again. I had already removed her credit cards and house keys from it. From the window, I watched as she spoke to the police officer who finally got out of his car. He kept shrugging and shaking his head. After a short exchange, he pointed to a spot on the driveway, presumably telling them to wait there. Then he came up and knocked on the door. Sir, your wife would like to speak with you, and you should understand that you can't legally bar her from the marital home, he said when I answered. You can tell her we have nothing to talk about. The house is already on the market because she made it clear it wasn't our marital home anymore. If it were, she'd have been in it last night instead of off with her boyfriend, wouldn't she? Have her lawyer contact mine. She knows who I use, I replied. The officer went back down the drive and spoke with Olivia and her friends briefly, but with clear frustration. Olivia then broke down, collapsing into the arms of her companions, who helped her back into the van. A moment later, they were gone. The police officer stood there shaking his head as he watched the garage shutter slowly close, then shrugged at one of the neighbors who had been observing the whole spectacle. He got back into his car and drove off. About an hour later, Clara called me. I told her everything that had happened during the day and she apologized, though for what, I wasn't sure. She asked what my plans were and I told her about the divorce and how I wouldn't be able to continue working for Thorn Dynamics anymore. Clara insisted I stay in touch and made me promise to do so. She also mentioned that Victor Sterling would be calling and that I needed to keep in contact with him so he could locate me. Leo had already mentioned Victor Sterling's upcoming visit, but I was still curious why it was so important. It was midnight by the time I returned to the Gateway Hotel. I couldn't face sleeping in that house again. Too many memories, now all tainted. After breakfast the next morning, I called my department secretary Carla to ask if Marcus was in the office. She told me he wouldn't be coming in that day and asked what was happening. I explained the situation briefly. Carla was visibly upset. I swear she was crying when I told her. She said Marcus had confided in her that he expected me to resign once I returned, and she got the impression he had avoided the office that day, specifically. When I arrived, Marcus's absence struck me as odd. I would have expected that after what happened with his brother, he'd have relished the chance to fire me. After all, Julian was one of the company's directors, and there was definitely no love lost between us. Nothing about any of this made sense. First, I was sent to Geneva. Marcus had insisted I go, but when I got there, everyone at Sterling acted surprised I had come. Yes, there had been some late software patches, but no one was losing their minds over them. Then there was Julian's involvement with Olivia. Yes, she was an attractive woman, but Julian was known as a bit of a womanizer who always had some young starlet on his arm. Olivia was at least 5 years older than him, and nearly 10 years older than his usual type. I don't know, maybe they'd fallen in love. They had spent a lot of time working together, but I doubted Julian would have settled like that. I went into the office to collect my personal belongings. While there, I took the opportunity to wipe the hard drives on both my company computer and the laptop I carried, but not before copying the contents onto several encrypted flash drives. I personally handed my resignation letter, which Carla had prepared with a heavy heart, to the HR manager. While I waited, he arranged for my final salary and bonuses to be deposited directly into my bank account. The accounts department was hesitant at first until they realized who was resigning. Nearly the entire staff helped me carry my things down to the rental car or came outside to wave me off. I had left my company car safely locked in the garage back at the house. I wanted to be sure I had everything I was owed before returning it. That was really it. I stayed at the Gateway for about a week before finding an apartment I liked in a quieter part of Etheria. The house sold quickly. It was in a good area, and I priced it to sell fast. I decided to take a few months off to consider my next steps. To be honest, I was still expecting an offer from Sterling Enterprises and didn't want to commit to anything else too soon. As for Olivia, I saw her a few times. Both times we had heated arguments, to be precise. I called her a cheating, deceitful woman, and she fired back with her own accusations. Civil discussions between us were impossible. I was surprised she didn't immediately shack up with Julian. She didn't move in with him until several months after I kicked her out of the house. Where she'd been staying in the meantime, I wasn't sure. The private investigator I hired to keep an eye on her, yes, I did that, said she moved in with Julian shortly after our first major disagreement at the lawyer's office. That meeting almost ended with the cops being called again. I think that's when she realized we were never getting back together. Our second clash came when we signed the divorce papers. Olivia looked odd sitting at the table before I entered, wrapped in a large winter coat and sitting strangely hunched. My lawyer and I sat opposite her and her counsel while the settlement details were read aloud. Then Olivia signed the documents, which were placed in front of me. As I approached to sign, Olivia asked, "Ethan, are you sure you want to do this? There are some things you really need to consider." "Did you hear any cheating, lying woman say something, Sandra?" I glanced at my lawyer. Olivia launched into a tirade, calling me all sorts of names. I quickly signed the papers and left without saying another word. As I said before, I had no desire to engage in a shouting match with her. A few weeks, maybe a month after the divorce was finalized, Clara called to let me know Victor Sterling would be in Nice that weekend. I arranged to meet him at a hotel there. After the usual awkward formalities, Victor and his wife chatted with me about their cruise for a while. Again, I got the feeling he was up to something. The guy was just a client I'd known for years, but he was acting like a long-lost friend. We went over the condolences regarding Arthur Thorne's death, and Victor expressed how sorry he was about what happened between Olivia and me. Then he apologized profusely, explaining he hadn't been able to act sooner because he had to follow Arthur's instructions. That statement struck me as evasive. Everything changed when we entered the private meeting room. Chloe, Victor's daughter, greeted me with a hug and a kiss on the cheek as usual. We'd become friendly over the years, then handed the briefcase she was carrying to Victor. Victor's wife and I left the room before he opened it. "Right, Ethan, let's get down to business," he said suddenly. "Tell me, what did you think when Arthur floated Thorne Dynamics but didn't give you any shares?" I honestly didn't know how to answer. "After all, it was his company, and he could do whatever he wanted with the money," I said. "But you helped him build it. From what I know of Arthur, I'm guessing you've gone out on a limb for him more than once," he pressed. I didn't respond to that. I figured he'd get to the point eventually. "Did you know Arthur also owned a large portion of Sterling Enterprises through offshore holding companies? Those same companies also hold a significant share of Thorne Dynamics stock." This was news to me, but I decided it was best to stay quiet and listen. Victor continued. "Tell me, what did Arthur say when he retired?" I replied, he realized he didn't have long to live. He asked me to try to keep his boys under control, but since I wasn't on the board, there was little chance of me doing so. Yes, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but he did it on purpose. He expected the boys to bankrupt the company within a year or so, and didn't want your name on the paperwork. He expected them to try to shift the blame onto you. You do know that if a company goes bankrupt due to mismanagement, the directors can be barred from holding other directorships, right? Anyway, he figured the boys would bleed the company dry before long. Now these papers make you the primary shareholder in those holding companies. Essentially, they're yours, Victor said, placing a stack of documents on the table detailing all of Arthur's numbered bank accounts. I was supposed to hold on to all this until Thorne Dynamics went under, but given what the brothers did to you, I believe you should have them now. Did you know that under the terms of their father's will, the brothers couldn't fire you? I see you haven't. I believe the lowlife set you up so you'd resign, he said, leaning back and looking at me. You know, Ethan, you're a very wealthy man now, but all your money is tied up in offshore accounts. You'll need to figure out how to bring it back into the country legally. I can show you some tricks. I have some very inventive accountants, he added. My mind was racing. He had just told me that Julian Thorne seduced Olivia and destroyed my life solely to push me out of the firm. But why? I asked. You seem angry, Ethan. And I don't blame you, Victor said. Look, Arthur never believed the boys were really his. His wife Eleanor had affairs while Arthur was away building the business. He had DNA tests done a few years ago, and for a time he even tried to believe he was their father, despite the results. Eventually, he accepted they knew he wasn't their biological father. He found out they said terrible things about him behind his back. Arthur always said you were more like a son to him, so he decided to leave you all his money. He assumed the boys would ruin the firm. I believe he wanted them bankrupt and penniless, just like you probably do. But what about Thorne Dynamics staff? Everyone will lose their jobs, I said. No, not if a large American company steps in to pick up the pieces. Do you get Arthur's little game now, Ethan? Sterling Enterprises plans to cancel its contracts with Thorne Dynamics within the next week or so. Then the next day, one or two of Thorne's offshore shareholders will sell a large number of shares on the Ethereum stock exchange. That should crash the stock price. A hint will be given to the appropriate bank directors, who will then call in the company's loans. After that, a consortium will step in to purchase the company's remaining assets from the banks. I'll let you guess who will lead that consortium and become the main shareholder. That part, however, will remain a secret. You will, of course, renegotiate your contracts with Sterling Enterprises. Hey, maybe one day you'll even invite me to join your board of directors. If Sterling and Thorne Dynamics merge, you'll also be appointed to Sterling's board. How does that sound to you, Ethan? He asked. I said, I don't understand. Why didn't Arthur just leave the company to me from the start? You'd be fighting will-related challenges for the next 20 years. You were with Arthur almost every day of his working life. Over the past few years, Arthur had become a bit eccentric. He was sure the family would claim you had undue influence over him. They were convinced he had hidden money overseas and have spent a fortune recently searching for it. That's why Arthur delegated everything to me. Anyone tracing your money will find it comes from me. And since I'm no longer connected to Sterling Enterprises operationally, they can't accuse us of insider trading. Of course, I've been stuck on that bloody ship for the last 6 months. So, there you have it, he concluded. I am now joint chairman of Sterling Thorne International. Leo runs the American branch while I keep an eye on European and Asian affairs. Both Thorne brothers were declared bankrupt and barred from serving as directors of any company for 10 years. They tried to set things up a few times under different guises, but I had people keeping close tabs on them. Surprisingly, Julian married Olivia. I'm not sure, but I believe he thought Olivia would get her hands on some of the money he suspected was headed to me. He had no chance, though, since it had officially become mine after Olivia and I divorced. After they married, I petitioned the court to terminate her alimony, so they received nothing from me. The marriage only lasted about a year. To be honest, I felt sorry for the child Olivia had with him. I suppose they were having their sordid affairs after I kicked her out. The PI I hired to watch Olivia said they rarely met in the evenings after they married. He was always out. I doubt that scumbag ever paid her maintenance after abandoning her. You know, these things cross your mind. I wondered how long Julian had been carrying on with Olivia, but she must have become pregnant soon after we separated. I saw her pushing a pram down an Oakbrook High Street just a year after I kicked her out. Julian was last heard of in southern Spain, where he was being investigated by the narcotics squad. Southern Spain, Morocco. I imagine a fast boat wouldn't be far away. That's how Julian's mind worked. That's why I anonymously tipped off the drug squad. As for Marcus, apparently he drives for a ride-sharing service around Etheria. Not the best place to make a living that way. His wife divorced him after discovering his little city flatmate. No prizes for guessing who gave her that information. And of course, Marcus lives with his mother, Eleanor. Do I feel guilty about Eleanor's loss of income from Thorne Dynamics? So the real question should be, did Eleanor feel guilty about her affairs while Arthur was breaking his back? You tend to reap what you sow. Olivia? The last I heard, she was living in a council flat and relying on social benefits. I imagine so. I don't know. Maybe she's working the streets on the side. Sorry, that was uncalled for, but that's how I feel sometimes. Once we got going, things moved fast. Leo and I worked extremely well together. We were both trained by experts. Arthur Thorne trained me, and Victor Sterling trained Leo. Over the next few years, we acquired other companies wholesale. The merger created a large multinational. Leo and I have since stepped back and let the younger executives handle most of the day-to-day worrying. Victor Sterling and his wife settled in the English countryside. He owns a nice estate next to mine. His daughter Chloe and I hang out occasionally. No, we aren't interested in marriage and have no plans to. We've both been down that road before. He's now on the board alongside Leo, Clara, and me. We all get along fine. So, Clara, what were you expecting? Leo's wife died in a car accident some years ago. After a long period of uncertainty, he married Clara. Leo says she married him because she was tired of waiting for me to ask her, why am I living alone in this penthouse? Something's been missing from my life since then. When I'm living day to day, if a profit opportunity arises in the market, I seize it. But there must be more to life than just making money. What do you think, listeners? Can wealth truly buy happiness, or does it just build taller cages? Okay, now this social worker, Ms. Diaz, is handing me a letter from Olivia. I read it quickly, then pressed the intercom button on my desk. Maria, could you please check if Chloe is in the building and ask her to come up here as soon as possible? I asked. Yes, sir. I saw her earlier in her office, and she hasn't left since, Maria replied. A few minutes later, she was at my door and came in. I handed her the letter without saying a word. As she read it, she took a few deep breaths, clearly angry. The vicious, vengeful little witch, Chloe muttered. Any ideas? She asked. Not the slightest, I said. What are you planning to do? Come on, Chloe. I have no choice in this matter. Turning to Ms. Diaz, I asked, what hospital is Olivia in and what's the prognosis? You remember when I was there last evening? They had no idea she'd taken a cocktail of drugs, almost everything she had in her house. They pumped her stomach, but they don't know how long she was unconscious. The doctor said it'll take some time before they have a clear idea. As for the children, I placed them with an emergency foster mother last night. She'll care for them today. I thought I'd ask what you want to do. I'll need to take that note back. If she doesn't survive, the coroner will investigate. Not a problem. Run a copy for me, Chloe. Then return the original to Ms. Diaz. Maria will contact Etheria General Hospital's general manager as soon as possible, and the intercom will be back online shortly, I said just as the telephone rang. Hello? Yes, good. Do you know who I am? I have a question for you. How much has your hospital overspent this year? All right, here's the deal. You have a patient named Olivia in your care. Sorry, Elena, but what surname does Olivia use? I asked Ms. Diaz. It's the same as yours, Cole, Ms. Diaz responded. That was surprising. You have a patient named Olivia Cole, a drug overdose case. If she survives, your hospital will receive a $1 million check from me. If she dies, you get nothing. Do you understand? Good. I don't want any corners cut. No expense spared. Goodbye, I said. Surely they're doing everything they can, Chloe commented. I don't trust the bloody bureaucrats who run our hospitals these days. You hear a lot about how they try to cut corners. Sometimes I just wonder. Anyway, flashing $1 million at them can't hurt, and I'm confident they'll do everything possible to help Olivia. Right now, let's go collect my kids. I assume that's why you came here in the first place, Elena, I said. Mrs. Cole claims they are your children in her letter. I don't see any harm in delegating their care to you for the time being, but until a judge says otherwise, they're your responsibility, Miss Diaz replied. You don't need to worry. They'll be in good hands, and I'll keep you updated on what's going on with them. With your permission, Chloe and I will drive them to my house near Aspen Glen. There should be plenty to keep them entertained until we know how Olivia will be. We can travel up the highway in about an hour to visit her in the hospital, I said. I'm glad you're thinking that way, Mr. Cole, Ms. Diaz said. Come on. We began this conversation with Elena and Ethan. I'm sure the kids will be more relaxed if we keep it that way, I replied. The three of us headed to the basement parking lot. Ms. Diaz joined Chloe and me in the back of my limo for the ride to Oak Brook. We stopped at the hospital first to check on Olivia. The doctors weren't willing to make any commitments at what they called this early stage. Then Ms. Diaz took us to the foster home where the children were staying. Chloe and I stayed in the car while she went in alone to speak with the kids. After about 10 minutes, she signaled for me to join her. I followed her inside. "Hey, Lily, this is your Uncle Ethan. He's going to look after you until your mother is feeling better," Ms. Diaz told them. We decided on the Uncle Ethan name for now, until we knew how Olivia would be and how the girls would take to me. "Hi, girls, this is my friend Chloe. You can call her Aunt Chloe," I said. The two 10-year-olds eyed Chloe and me with suspicion. "Until your mommy gets better, you're going to stay with your Uncle Ethan at his country home. I think you'll like it there. He has horses you can ride, and the house has its own swimming pool," Chloe added. "Where is our mother?" "Can we see her? Is she going to die?" Lily asked, her voice small. "Well, the doctors are doing their best to prevent that from happening," I volunteered. The girls still looked distrustful. "We saw her a little while ago, but if you want, we can stop by the hospital so you can see how hard they're working to make her well again." "They might not allow the children to visit her, but," Ms. Diaz assured me, "they'll let these children see their mother, I promise you." I reminded her about the money involved. We dropped Ms. Diaz off at the station where she had left her car before heading to the hospital. As I expected, the rules were bent and the girls were allowed into the ICU. The girls didn't cry like I thought they would. They were tough little cookies. Chloe even remarked there was a clear family resemblance to me. At that moment, I decided to forget about the DNA tests I had planned. The drive back to Aspen Glen was pretty quiet. Once the girls started to feel at home in the limo, they played with almost everything. The idea of watching TV while driving down the highway was something new and exciting to them. As we exited the highway, Lily turned to me and asked, "You're our father, aren't you?" I saw no reason to deny it. "Yes, I believe I am. But I have to tell you, I only found out today. If I had known sooner, you would have seen a lot more of me." "We know," Lily said. "Mommy told us last week that she didn't tell you about us. We didn't know what she planned, but she said she was very nasty to you and never told you that you were our father. She said, you thought her other husband was our dad?" Mia, the other twin, added, tears in her eyes. Kay, Lily's twin, nodded. "That's true. Maybe one day your mother will explain why she did what she did," I said. "Do you think she's going to get better?" Mia asked. "Well, I certainly hope so," I replied. "She doesn't want to get better," Lily said. "She wants to go to heaven," Lily added quietly. "I can't believe that with two wonderful children like you," Chloe said. "Mommy's tired. She works so hard and there's never enough money," Lily explained. "Well, there's going to be now, and she definitely won't be working anymore." "See that little house?" I said as we entered the grounds of my estate. "When she gets better, I'm going to ask your mother if she'd like to live there. You two will be able to ride horses and swim in the pool up at the big house." The girls' eyes grew wide as they stared at the mansion. The car stopped in front of the house and the staff rushed down the steps to greet them. I knew the staff had hurriedly prepared for their arrival. One of the guest rooms with twin beds had been set up just for them. Chloe and I were practically forgotten as the staff fussed over the girls and whisked them away. "Well, that's a turn up for the books," Chloe said. "I wonder why Olivia didn't tell you they were yours," I said, more to myself. "She must have gone to great lengths to hide her pregnancy from me." Now that I think about it, I believe she was already showing at our last meeting when we signed the divorce papers. I remember she was sitting there hunched over, wearing a long coat. I remember thinking it was odd for her to wear such a heavy coat on a nice day like that. I wondered why she hated me so much. After all, she was the one who cheated on me. How else did she expect me to react when I found out she was sleeping with that loser? "You'll have to ask her that, assuming she survives," Chloe said. The children settled in very well, I thought. They loved all the attention from the house staff and seemed to be enjoying themselves a lot. Every night I tucked them into bed and told them a little more about their mother and my life with her, stopping short of the last terrible year. 2 weeks later, I entered the hospital room where Olivia was sleeping. She had woken up in a conscious state for the first time the night before. I placed the letter she had left in her hand and waited for her to wake fully. I suppose I must have dozed off while waiting. "Hello, Ethan." "I apologize," were the first words I heard her say. I glanced at her and saw she was staring at the letter in her hand. How are my girls? She asked. They're fine. I left them at the swimming pool this morning. I can tell you they're wearing my staff out. Two lovely girls and a real credit to you. Chloe's going to bring them here this afternoon, I told her. Thank you. I'm sorry I hid them from you. It was a foolish thing I did out of anger, but once it was done, I couldn't figure out how to undo it, she said. Well, I couldn't think of a worse way than the one you chose, I replied. I'm sorry, but I was desperate. You know, I owe thousands of dollars I just can't pay back. Julian left me with so many debts. He made me sign for everything. I think that's why he married me, because as a bankrupt, he couldn't get credit, she explained. You don't owe any debts now, Olivia. I've cleared them all. And those loan sharks you borrowed from are out of business for good, I said. You found out about them? She asked. That wasn't hard. They showed up at your apartment demanding money while one of my staff was collecting the girls' things. He told them to come back later, and I think they got quite a surprise when they did. Rest assured, they'll never bother you again, I assured her. Why are you being so kind to me? The last time you saw me, she began. That was a long time ago, Olivia. And I was still hurting then. Now it's just an unhappy memory. Mind you, I learned a lot when I read your letter. It'll take me a long time to forgive you for keeping my girls from me, I said. I'm sorry, that's all I can say, she replied. Well, as far as the girls know, we're friends now. Tomorrow, if you agree, you'll be moved to my house. I've got a couple of nurses lined up to care for you there. When you're fully recovered, you and the girls can live in one of the estate houses. That way, I can see them often, I said. You're not going to take the children away from me? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm not going to take their mother away from my girls now. I don't love you, Olivia. Maybe I never truly did in the way I thought. Or maybe the betrayal killed it. But I will make sure you never take them away from me again, I replied. I'm sorry, that's all I keep saying, but I truly am sorry for all the foolish things I've done, she said. There's one question I have to ask you, Olivia. Why did you go with that miserable creep in the first place? I asked. Don't you think that's a question I've asked myself 1,000 times over the last 10 years? I'm not sure I have an answer. He worked on me very carefully over a long time, she admitted. I know why he set out to do it. He told me once he realized the girls weren't his, which didn't take him long. They look so much like you, she said. He said they couldn't fire you because of something to do with their father's will. They were convinced you had some of their father's money. They thought when you were unemployed, you'd use some of it, too. I don't know, start your own business or something. I suppose they had private detectives watching you all the time. Were they upset when you went to Nice and met Victor Sterling? Then a week later, the company's 4 biggest contracts were canceled. Sterling's among them. But you knew that was coming, didn't you? I think the bank foreclosing on them really caught them off guard. They didn't expect that, she replied. And then the police showed up at the house. Did you know Julian charged almost everything to the company? We had nothing. No house, no car, nothing. Julian and Marcus were arrested for misusing company funds, but I suspect you were behind all that, she said. No, Olivia. The law took its own course without any help from me. But Julian and Marcus were on ridiculous salaries. What did they do with all their money? I asked. I'm not sure. They both liked playing the stock market, and Julian threw money around like water in clubs. He also enjoyed gambling. I think they squandered it all, she explained. When they decided to get you out of the firm, they planned on you revealing where all the money was that they were sure Arthur had hidden away, she added. You still haven't explained why you went with that loser, I pressed. Well, I was angry with you. You know, Julian was very clever. He pulled the wool over my eyes every time. Whenever you were away, he'd drop little comments or let me overhear conversations that made me believe you had girlfriends everywhere, she said. It's hard to explain, but I'd hear him discussing expenses with Marcus for nightclubs and such. I'm sure the expenses were legitimate, but it was the little remarks he'd make to Marcus on the phone that I wasn't supposed to hear. Of course, he made sure I did. You know, typical man talk. He'd say things like, you had a new girl in Geneva or Rome, and spent a lot of money entertaining her. They convinced me that whenever you had trips, it was to meet up with your girlfriends, she said. But if you thought I was cheating on you, why didn't you confront me? I asked. Because I couldn't bring myself to believe it. If I had confronted you and you'd said it was true, what would I have done then? I wasn't strong like you. I don't think I could have walked away and divorced you. I've been living in misery, but as time went on, I started to doubt that belief. Then that opera came up. You knew I wanted you to take me to it. Well, Julian was there when you called and said you were going to Geneva. He heard our conversation and I was crying, so he comforted me. Then he drove me home so I could get your bag and take it to the airport. We didn't go back to work. Julian said I was too upset. We went down to the river at Sunnydale Park and sat talking all afternoon. After that, he took me out for a meal and to the opera that night. I think I must have had too much to drink. I know it's no excuse, but that night I went to bed with him. I'm sure I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't drunk so much, but that's easy to say now, isn't it? I was feeling very low, and Julian made me feel good about myself that day. After all, my so-called loving husband had just flown off to meet his girlfriend. Or so I thought. I still thought that until Julian walked out on me. He told me everything about how they set it up. If you hadn't come home that day, they had photographs of Julian and me together, and they were going to send them to you anonymously. I knew it was wrong to sleep with Julian, and if it's any consolation, he wasn't very good in bed, too selfish. I don't want to hear that, Olivia, I interrupted. I'm sorry, but he was useless at almost everything except hitting me. He got quite good at that toward the end. When you came back and found Julian and me together, I was angry. I'm not sure why, but I felt you set me up. That bloody Clara told me you weren't coming home until Sunday. That bloody little tart. Yes, Clara, I was sure she was your bit of trouble over there. Well, she wasn't, don't you think? I realize that now, but I thought you set me up so you could catch me and divorce me. That made me really angry. I suppose I was angry with myself, really, she admitted. I was going to tell you about the twins the day we signed the divorce papers. I had it all planned. I'd sign the papers, and then before you signed, I'd tell you about the babies. That way, it wouldn't seem like I was using them to get you to change your mind and take me back. You'd have the choice whether to sign or not. But you were still angry with me. You know, I think that's when I really should have realized you hadn't been cheating on me. If you had, surely you wouldn't have been so angry with me for doing the same thing. No, you called me a bloody traitor and I lost my temper, she said. I apologize for God's sake. Stop saying you're sorry. What's done is done and nothing can change it, I said. Will you ever forgive me? She asked. Forgive you? Now that's a question. Maybe I'll forgive you eventually, but there's no way I'll ever forget. But there are two lovely young ladies involved now, and I, or rather we, have to think of them. I'll be civil to you at all times, and I expect the same from you. As far as the girls are concerned, you are their mother, and I will be their loving father. Just don't bring your boyfriends around my house, I said. There have never been any boyfriends, and there never will be. Ever, she replied. Ever is a long time, Olivia, I said. Olivia recovered more or less and lived in the little house on the estate with the girls until they went off to university. Cancer took her a couple of years ago. I don't think she ever really had the strength to fight it hard. I'm convinced the drugs she took during that overdose caused some lasting damage. Did being with Chloe in the end mean we loved each other? I don't think I loved Chloe the way I loved Olivia, or the way I thought I loved Olivia. Chloe and I are kindred spirits, perhaps. We're very fond of each other, and we enjoy being intimate. I suppose it is a form of love, but not the consuming, all-encompassing fire I once knew, or believed I knew. The twins Lily and Mia are grown and married now, with children of their own. Chloe has earned the title of grandma, though I think she still feels too young for it. Am I happy now? Yes and no. What's missing? Perhaps the dream of what could have been, the life I thought I'd have with the woman I first loved. Now, all I can do is place flowers on her grave. Chloe waits at the cemetery gate every Sunday while I do so. Life goes on. But it rarely goes as planned. It twists, it turns, it breaks, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it reshapes itself into something new, something unexpected, something that holds a different kind of meaning. The empires we build, whether of business or of love, are fragile. The betrayals leave scars that never truly fade. But through it all, the one constant, the one true north, can be the love for our children, and perhaps the quiet strength we find in simply enduring, in picking up the pieces, and in continuing to walk forward, even when the path is littered with the wreckage of the past. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. And sometimes the person we need to forgive most is ourselves, for the choices made, the trust given, and the dreams that died. But in their place, new realities can grow, watered by resilience and the enduring hope for peace, if not perfect happiness. Dear listeners, this has been a long and emotional journey. What are your thoughts on Ethan's story, the betrayals, and the way things ultimately unfolded? Please share your reflections in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might appreciate it, and subscribe to Lost Love Chronicles for more tales of the heart. Thank you for listening.